Hey, what's up? You're watching Sit Down. I'm DJ Sixsmith. This is Thomas Sadoski. He's here with us. He's got his brand new CBS show. What's up, man?
Hey, man, how are you?
Good.
Good.
This looks like a good one.
This is a good one.
I mean, you've done a lot of different stuff in your career, but
yeah, I'm really
tell me how this one came about.
I'm genuinely excited about this. Look, anytime you get an opportunity to work with somebody like Edie Falco,
you're in.
You're in.
Yeah.
Like if she's leading your charge, you know, not only you as the cast and the creative team and everyone else working on the show are going to be in really good hands because she's such an amazing human being, but the audience is going to be in incredibly good hands too. Like Edie is somebody who you can instantly get on board with, regardless of where you're from. You know, if you live in Iowa, or you live in California, or if you live in Vermont, like it doesn't really matter. Like there's something just inherently cool and human about Edie Falco, and you're rooting for her right out of the gate. And she's as good in this as she ever has been in anything, which is saying quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Sopranos, Nurse Jackie. I mean, think about all the shows that she's been on that are Transform TV, which is a cool thing.
Yeah.
So when you think about the experience with her, like you've worked with a ton of people, what is particular to Edie Falco in terms of the way that she's on set, the way that she works with people?
Well, Edie is among the kindest, most down-to-earth people that you ever want to work with. Like she creates these little sort of families wherever she goes, you know, like our set was just tons of people that she had worked with before and tons of people that she wanted to work with, and all really, you know, not only very talented, but like high quality people, you know, no attitudes, no egos, none of that stuff on our set. And it shows, I think, that it really, really shows that we have this group of people and this cast that really enjoys working with each other, that respects each other, this crew that's extraordinary that also enjoys working, you know, on our show, and like that work just shows, and the audience is going to be able to sense that and dive right in with us. It's a really cool thing. Even
just the storyline, woman coming from New York, ready to break the glass ceiling in Los Angeles, like it's definitely interesting, and it definitely feels like it's of the time too. So what was it like for you guys unpacking all that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, the great thing about the show is that it's not hitting anybody over the head with anything. You know, it's just telling the story. I mean, this is a story that is frankly an interesting story to tell right now, and a story worth being told right now. But we're not sort of like pounding anybody over the head like this is what you should, you know, we're not lecturing anybody.
Right.
We're telling this very cool human story with really great actors and really good writing, and people are going to be, you know, the politics of it and everything are not really something that's at the forefront. It's the storytelling about these characters that people are going to get locked right into, because it's a story about people, and it's entertaining, it's funny, it's dramatic. There's lots of really great questions that are being asked at any given moment, and the audience, I think, is just going to really be able to like sit back, trust that they're going to have a good time watching it, and just go on the journey with us. And you know, frankly, that's what folks kind of need right now. You know, that there's just so much stuff coming at everybody.
A lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, you know, and like you want to enjoy the time that you give yourself for entertainment. We're going to give you good entertainment.
So you mentioned the questions being asked. What are some of the big questions that you guys examine in this show?
Well, I mean, we deal with, I think that people will sort of understand this, but we don't deal with it in a super specific way. We deal with the difference between politicians and the public. You know, we don't sort of take any side. There's no political party that's mentioned or anything like that. We're not doing that stuff. We're not lecturing or sermonizing to anybody. We're talking about people. We're talking about the population of this one particular city, and how do you keep it safe in the face of all of these various different things that are going on for this person at any given moment. Not only is she attempting to navigate what it is to be the chief of police in a city of 4-something million people.
One of the biggest cities around.
Yeah, which is hard enough. But also she's trying to navigate her personal life. You know what I mean? She's got an estranged daughter that she's reconnecting with, and then also, you know, she's got the politics of things that she has to deal with too. She's got this mayor who's sort of looming over the situation
And that's where you come into
and
the
that's
mix.
where I come
Yeah.
into play. You know, it's sort of looming over the situation at any given moment. And can she trust him? Can she not trust him? Is he a good guy? Isn't he a great guy? You know, and all those questions sort of collide in this one character that I think people are just going to really relate to.
Yeah, you kind of hit on the shadiness of a mayor, of a politician. So what was the appeal in playing a character like that?
I think that, you know, it spoke to a part of me that enjoys sort of stirring the pot. I didn't have a problem playing a mayor of questionable pedigree, a politician of
You're in on that? Yeah.
questionable pedigree. You know, that
Didn't take much to convince you there.
didn't take much to say that might be a lot of fun to dive into. But also, you know, one of the great things about the show and one of the great things about the writers is that they leave room, and this was also very, very important for me going into this. They leave room for this character to grow and potentially change and be changed by the people he's working with. And so actually, I think what ends up happening is you sort of end up rooting for the guy. You sort of end up, he's like one of those characters that you can't really dismiss as a villain. You know, you sort of get a kick out of him, out of how just unabashedly himself he is. But also you realize that he definitely got there by some pretty unsavory means, but he doesn't intend on staying that way. And he's trying to grow and he's trying to figure it out. And like, that's an interesting story to watch too.
Yeah, we don't always see that evolution, whether it's with people or, and especially politicians.
Especially
people just like to
politicians.
remain the same.
They do indeed, you
Yeah.
know, and like I think that it's much more interesting to tell stories about people who change. That's what
Absolutely. That's what life's all about.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what people want to watch. You know, if there's no conflict and there's no change, then
Right. Kind of bored.
it's really boring.
So you've been in the CBS family for some time now.
I have,
When you
yeah.
think back to where you were at the start of Life in Pieces, like, you know, what did your career look like at that point? What were you looking to gain from getting on CBS, and what's it been like?
You know, after I had finished working at HBO, the opportunity came to work on a half-hour comedy at CBS, and like I never imagined that I would sign on to doing a half-hour comedy.
It wasn't in the idea.
It was
of
never
anything for your
really in
career?
my cards. It was never something that I really thought of. And then they said, well, you know, Diane Wiest is going to play your mom, and you know, you're going to have Colin Hanks and Betsy Brandt and Angelique Cabral and
Great
Dan
cast,
Bach and
yeah.
all. They started listing all these names of people who were going to be involved in the show, and I went, why wouldn't I want to go play with those people? And frankly, like stretch myself a little bit and see, like, is this something that I not only can do, is it something I can do, but is it something I really want to do? I've sort of dismissed it out of hand, you know, contempt prior to investigation. And like, how silly is that? So I dove in and started working with these incredible people, and you know, it was an amazing experience. You know, I'm very grateful for it in a lot of ways, mostly because I got to meet and work with and grow very close to that cast and any number of people who worked on that team, that crew. I have, you know, great relationships from that show that'll last me a lifetime, because some of those people that I worked with were truly, truly just incredible human beings, and I'm just so grateful for the time that we got to spend together.
That's awesome, especially after the Newsroom too, where it's like you could have gone into the typecast role where you're like kind of the jerk who's figuring some things out. It's like, no, let me do something different. Let me challenge myself. So
Yeah.
what was the toughest part about kind of taking a veer to the right,
Oh
and
my
something a little
God.
different?
You know, it's jumping right from like an Aaron Sorkin hour-long
Yeah.
HBO
A
drama,
beast of a show,
yeah, which is
yeah.
a beast of a show, into doing half-hour comedy. You know, it requires a different kind of dedication, but the same level. You know, you got to show up and be ready to play. And you know, it was frankly, it was like training a new muscle, and that was exciting. That was really exciting. I was learning on my feet, you know, and I'm always sort of interested in growing in that way and seeing what happens. You know, I like to sort of push myself and sometimes like flop horribly.
But that's what you should do. That's life.
Yeah,
You're
that's
gonna fail.
life,
Yeah.
right? And like, you know, it's not like it's not like I was performing brain surgery. Like, you know, I
trying a different acting role here.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, no one was going to die
Right,
if
you
I
put it all
didn't
in
do this well.
perspective, yeah.
My ego may have taken a hit, but like, good. It probably needs to, you know? So, yeah, it was great. It was great diving into that and getting humbled and learning. And then, unfortunately, it ended when it ended. You know, I think we all would have liked for it to keep going. And then this opportunity came up, and it sort of is like this opportunity to split the difference and sort of jump back into more of what I'm accustomed to, but with the lessons that I have learned sort of going in with me, and I'm excited to be part of it.
So you mentioned Sorkin. What sticks out to you about working with somebody like that? Because he pushes boundaries, very specific in the way he goes about things. What do you remember about working with him?
I love Aaron. You know, we had a great relationship. We had a great working relationship, and I was very proud, very honored to get to work on his words. You know, and he's also a very kind man in the way that he goes about questioning and pushing, and that runs sometimes a little bit contrary to the way that I go about doing things, and I learned a lot from that. And you know, he has a dedication to his work and a specificity of how he works that I think is really really inspiring. And I think all young artists could learn a lot from sort of watching him in action, you know, just in terms of how much he cares, and you know, how far he's willing to push himself in his work to get it just the way he wants to get it, with the voice that he wants to get it with. I think is really some great lessons to be learned there for young artists.
Yeah, and that show pushed and questioned a lot when it came to news coverage. So what was it like for you guys in the moment to unpack that stuff? Because obviously politically it was a different time, but still what you guys were questioning was stuff in the moment. You're digesting it. You have to figure out what's going on in the world and also put it on TV. So what was the most fascinating part of that?
Well, you know, we were actually dealing with news events that had happened, or that were happening in real time for us, that were happening not necessarily in direct real time, but in the recent past. And by the time it got to air, it had been some time since these news stories had broke, and since these things had been discussed. So it was important for us to find a way to talk about these things without feeling like we were Monday morning quarterbacking.
Which could have been very easy to do with
Which
that
was,
show.
you know, and sometimes, you know, but was sometimes necessary. We did do that sometimes, but sometimes it was necessary. And that made a lot of people in journalism very uncomfortable. It upset them.
Yeah, you want to talk about egos. I mean, those are egos that aren't necessarily being broken down all the time.
Those are egos that do not get broken down. And I think that the humbling that they got, or should have gotten, from the show, whether they liked it or didn't like it, there were some legitimate questions being asked and some legitimate ways of doing things that were being put forward that were really worthwhile to listen to. And I think people reacted and sort of dug their heels in, and I think to the detriment of news as we have seen it play out now. We are in a society now where nobody trusts the fourth estate. And I don't know that that's necessarily for any bad reason. I think that there's some legitimate reasons not to trust any number of news organizations. Because opinion has definitely trumped fact.
Oh, absolutely,
so to speak. And you know, we were saying something at the time of like, hey, you know, you need to sort of pay attention to how you're going about doing things, because this is gonna catch up at some point. And nobody wanted to hear that, and it did. And now I think that those same egos who could have used a little deflating, those sort of egos are being snipped from their balloon cord and let fly, and it's a shame. I don't know where we go from here. You know, I've heard it said that we live in this post-truth society, and that's unsustainable for a democracy.
It's a scary thing.
It's unsustainable for a democracy. We can't continue to be a democracy, regardless of what political side you sit on.
Right. Truth just has to be a foundation.
We can't.
Yeah.
We can't sustain as a country with our political system intact without that at its core. And I think that's why so many people are just like disaffected. So many people just roll their eyes when they hear about politics or the media or any of that sort of stuff. And I get it. I totally get it. And they are not wrong. And it's a heartbreaking state of affairs because I love this country, as I feel like so many people do.
Absolutely,
you know? Yeah. And I don't want to dishonor the memory of the people who have gone before, who have worked so hard for change, or the people who have served and sacrificed by allowing us to just give up on the experiment because we're getting disgruntled by the people who are in charge and the people who are sort of calling them to task. And we need to figure that out real quick.
Yeah, well, you're aware of it. I think that's the biggest thing. Some people just kind of bury their heads in the sand when it comes to that.
Understandably.
Yeah, and I get that part of it too.
Sure.
So bringing it back to your career, when you think about the other stuff you've done, theater, TV, film, what are some of the other big things that stand out? What have you enjoyed the most, people you've worked with, stuff like that?
I have been blessed throughout the course of my career, and I mean that, truly, truly blessed and humbled throughout the course of my career to work with some of the best of the best. I mean, really, truly, some of the absolute best of the best, be they playwrights or theater directors or film directors or actors. My God, I mean, I've had the opportunity to learn from and to stand next to some of the absolute titans of this art form. And I'm sort of constantly amazed when I get those opportunities. I'm doing it again here, working with Edie, and I really just, you know, I love kicking back and enjoying the ride and learning what I can learn from them, trying to apply it as much as I possibly can and try to grow my toolbox a little bit more and grow as an artist. And the fact that I keep on being asked to be a part of these things, that's the great joy of my life, man. And you know, I mean, great joy of my professional life, my family.
You got some other things going on.
But that is the it's a pretty cool thing. It's a very, very good feeling.
What's the biggest difference between you as an artist now compared to like 5 years ago?
Wow, that's a really great question. I think, you know, throughout the course of my life and the course of my career, I've always, very early on, I was trained to have a voice, have an opinion, you know, and then at some point I was told, well, you know, having a voice, having an opinion isn't, you know, you get this a lot as an actor. You get a lot of shut up and act, you know what I mean? And we're not hiring you for your opinion. Nobody wants to hear your opinion. You're just an actor. And
happens with athletes all the time.
Happens with athletes all the time. Frankly, it happens with everybody all the time. You know, it's the nature of having a platform. And people aren't wrong. Because a lot of times, we as a culture make, there's this great thing that goes around. People say, like, stop making stupid people famous, and like, I can't disagree with that. There are any number of times where I see compatriots and colleagues.
Right, and you're like, how does this person have a platform?
Like, dear God, how does this person have a platform? And what are you saying? And I have learned, I think probably in the last 5 years, to really dial in my sources by fully exposing myself. And I always have to a certain extent.
Right, but really going in for it.
Really diving in on both sides of the fence and hearing and exposing myself to both sides of an argument before I really come down somewhere with an opinion. And I've also learned that it doesn't necessarily serve me in the things that I'm most passionate about, which are dealing with refugee children and their safety and security and health and their needs, and children and women who are caught in conflict regions and in conflict situations. It doesn't help me to be silent. It doesn't help them for me to be silent, and it also doesn't help them for me to drive people away. So I try to present myself and my opinions with as much of an open hand and a willingness to be wrong and a willingness to have a discussion as I possibly can. And I think you get a lot more conversations because people really are good in their core and they do want to help. and I've learned a lot about how to welcome people from all different sort of folds into a community to help people where I feel like, you know, that help speaks to me.
Good words to live by.
I hope so.
Awesome, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Check him out. Tommy, Thursday's a big day for Thomas on DJ. See you next time here on The Sit Down.